Dying, Christ destroyed our death. Rising, Christ restored our life. Christ will come again in glory. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and I am life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, yet shall they live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore. And I hold the keys of hell and death. Because I live, you shall live also. Friends, we have gathered here to praise God and witness to our faith as we celebrate the life of Robert Bob Riley. We come together in grief, acknowledging our human loss. Through our tears, we celebrate Robert's life. May God grant us grace that in pain we may find comfort, in sorrow, hope, in death, resurrection. Our hope today is to put a tremendous exclamation point at the end of a great life, and to celebrate both the gift of Mr. Riley, but also God's promise to each and every one of us. You see, this work we do today is hard work. I call it bittersweet work. The sweet part of it is the fact that we know that Mr. Riley, or Bob, or Coach Riley, or whatever name is familiar to you, is home, no longer dealing with the pain and struggles of this earth. That's the sweet part. It's also sweet to celebrate a life that's touched so many, that caused Facebook pages to explode with comments, and every single person for the last week has stopped me to tell me a Mr. Riley or a Coach Riley story. A great life of a great man. The bitter part is what we're really here to do, and that's for all of us to say goodbye. As much as we can go through the process of saying how much it means to us, we can go through the process of sharing sweet stories of who he was, and to know that he is at home, no longer feeling the pain and ache of this world. It still doesn't replace the hole that is left in our hearts, in our minds. And so that's what we're gathered here to do, is to celebrate a memory and celebrate a homegoing, but also deal with our own grief. Now, the trouble with this is that to celebrate a life would take far more time than we have today. If we let everyone here share a story about Mr. Riley, or about Coach Riley, or about Bob, we would be here for days on end. And so we only can capture a glimmer of who he was, only celebrate a portion of who he was, but know that he is so much more than the small pieces that we share this afternoon together. And as we celebrate his life, celebrate his fact that he is at home, and deal with the grief that's on our hearts to say goodbye, that we acknowledge the limits of our human space and time by going to God, to ask God to continue this work long after we close this service today. And so with that, let's go to God in prayer to open our hearts and minds, to prepare us for the process that is ahead and continues on after the service. Let us pray. Eternal God, we praise you for the great company of all those who have finished their course in faith and now rest from their labor. We praise you for those dear to us whom we name in our hearts before you. Especially we praise you for Robert, Bob, Coach Riley, Mr. Riley, whom you have graciously received into your presence. To all of these, grant your peace, let perpetual light shine upon them, and help us so to believe where we have not seen, that your presence may lead us through our years and bring us at last with them into the joy of your home, not made with hands, but eternal in the heavens. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, who taught each and every one of us to pray together by saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, the power, glory forever. Amen. Today, as we begin the time of remembering and celebrating, I have two powerful scriptures for us to focus our thoughts and minds on the life of a great man. The first of these comes from 2 Timothy. In 2 Timothy, the author is writing, reminding us that this journey we are on is not just done at the end of our race here, but continues on. And it celebrates the attributes of Mr. Riley that we're going to continue to share as we go on today. But hear these words from 2 Timothy 4. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. As I said, we celebrate that Coach Riley, Mr. Riley, is at home. It's a reminder to us that he has finished his race, and this journey is one he calls us on to. We have 5 tenets that measure up a little bit about who he is. And they begin with this idea of racing and going towards this goal, of living into our goal. Let me continue on by giving us John 14. I love John 14 for funerals. Jesus in John 14 through 17 is explaining to the disciples the process that he's going to have to go through to die. And he gives them instructions about how to deal with his death that I think resonate with us here today. That remind us that even in the midst, in the pain of death, that God is with us. And remind us of the joy that we have from a faith in Jesus Christ. It begins simply with powerful words. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Let those words sink in. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. There's more than enough room in my Father's home. If this were not so, would I have told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you? When everything is ready, I will come and get you, so that you will always be with me where I am, and you know the way to where I am going. We know that Mr. Riley, is at home. That's the great news. And if we continue on our path following his example of faith and love, we can meet him on the other side. It's a powerful reminder to us. And so what we need to do is to do 2 things: to celebrate a great life, but also deal with our grief. And I think that the answer for both of these is the same. Time and time again, we come to this place of grieving, of grief. And sadly, the outside world tells us that grief is something we should get over. 170 some funerals later, I can tell you that grief is not something we get over, but that we get through. And the way we do that is together. Look at the people gathered here. Look how many lives, and this is just a fraction of the people that Mr. Riley's life touched. Each and every one of you are witness to the love together. Grief is a hard thing. There's nothing like being sad. But the only thing worse than being sad is being sad and alone. But look at all of us gathered here. We all carry the way to get through this together. And the way I think that presses forward is to share stories. You see, our brains are hardwired for stories. Think about the things that we love most. We love music and television and books and things like this. They're all based on this idea of story. We as human beings love stories, real or imagined. But I invite you to tell stories about Mr. Riley. Tell a story about what he meant to you. Because here's the powerful thing, that for each and every one of us gathered here, we only contain one piece of who Mr. Riley was. So as we go out, there are thousands of people with thousands of stories about who Mr. Riley was. And so I encourage you to lean into that and to share those stories. And we're going to have a blessing today, because we're going to have people come forward and share stories. Because as I said, if we let all of you share stories, we would be here a long time. And they do have to do worship on Sunday. We wouldn't make it. We're going to listen to the stories. And I love that his family has so lovingly come up with 5 areas that express who Mr. Riley was. Areas of faith, welcome to that journey right now. Community, education, athletics, and family. And we should have speakers from all of them, except for our speaker for athletics is not doing well, and we ask for prayers for Jim as he's in the hospital, or was in the hospital at the last check. And so be with him and send prayers and thoughts that way. But again, there's no need to add extra stories to Mr. Riley's large athletic resume. It's known by all who have known him or met him or seen any one newspaper article about him. But these 5 areas sum up who he is, and by telling stories about that, we remind ourselves of that of Mr. Riley that lives inside of each of us. So as I begin the faith section, Mr. Riley was a man of great faith. Visiting and talking with him, he shared about his faith and his love and grace and how he experienced it in different ways. One of my favorite parts about it is that his love of nature and trees, it speaks well of his faith, of how God created the things that were around him. And again, we don't have enough time, because even I, who did not grow up in Napanee and only knew Mr. Riley for a short time, as you can tell, I struggled to call Mr. Riley Bob. I still call Mr. Riley Mr. Riley. And so I encourage you to tell stories today, because that's how we live out our faith. That's how we share who he was to each and every one of us, is to tell stories. And tell all the stories, not just some of the stories. Stories that make you laugh. Stories that make you cry. Stories about how great Mr. Riley was, but also stories that remind you that Mr. Riley was a human being. Stories that are appropriate for church. Stories that are inappropriate for church. All the stories of who he was to you. And not just today, because it is too much. I mean, just to go through one Facebook feed would take you hours of stories of Mr. Riley. But continue to tell stories about who he was today and tomorrow. Tell the family these stories. Write them in a card. Send them to the family. Let them know who Bob Riley was to each and every one of you. Share them tomorrow, the next day, next month, next year. Because that's how he truly stays alive in our memory and in our hope and our love for one another. By telling stories of who he was. And so in a moment here, I'm going to invite the speakers that are listed here, and they are all adults, most of them. All of them are adults, and so I trust them to come in the order that they're in the bulletin. I'm not going to stand up and now welcoming like we are The Price is Right. I'm going to invite them come forward and share their bit of story here at the front into this microphone down here, so you don't have to come up to the high place up here. As they come in their order that they're put in the bulletin, and invite to listen to their stories. In the midst of that, remember who Mr. Riley was to each and every one of us, as we listen to these 5 areas of his life that are a call on our lives. Because that's the other piece of this. Each and every life is a reminder to us to live each and every day in the memory of the people that have gone before. And so I encourage you to listen to these stories. So would the first speaker, would Dale come forward and share with us our story, and that will start us rolling as we go. So.
Can you hear me? Coach Bob Riley loved this community for living here for over 60 years, raising a family. Right here in front of us, Kevin, Kim, Kelly. Don't know if I had it in right order. Probably not. I went from reverse order. He arrived here in '63, teaching history at Napanee High School, and then he went on to teach at Northwood. He was the first baseball coach in Napanee, and then it carried through to Northwood. He truly loved this area. Graduating, I really didn't get to know Bob. He was more of a coach, and didn't get to know him until he came to our Old Geezers Club. That's what they called us. I graduated in '64. It was my misfortune, or was it fortune, that I didn't have him in class that year. That was the first year he was here. I guess I'll never know. Most of my contacts with him were, like I said, taking pictures of him, either on the hardwood court or on the baseball diamond just down the left field line, giving all those signals, and he was doing all those signals there, and I often wondered, well, what they meant. Was it a bunt? Was it a hit? Was it take the pitch? I'm not sure. I was always going to ask him, but I never got to ask him that one. I don't know if he would share that with me, to be truthful. After teaching over 30 years, he retired from Wanee Schools, Northwood, and that's when I got to know Bob a lot better personally. He started coming to our coffee sessions. Like I said, the Old Geezers, what some people called us there. And we had a lot of fun with Bob, a lot of talking, cured the world's problems, we thought. I heard once that when teachers retire, they lose their class. Well, Bob never lost his class, and he never stopped teaching. He was always telling us how to tie a fly, that's teaching. He knew how to plant trees, where to plant them, what to plant. And like a great teacher, he had all the answers and told us. He was a master gardener, always learning and teaching. And he loved to read. He and my wife were both big readers. I think that was a teacher thing. He read mostly historical novels and watched a lot of PBS, public television. Many times he would leave, as I would leave home, he would give me a book that Bob would give to her to read. Or if it wasn't a book of his, it was a book of hers that she would want Bob to read. And a lot of times, if I didn't have a book to hand, she'd say, hey, ask Bob what he's reading. So I said, okay. So a lot of times when we meet Bob, maybe in an aisle at Martin's, of course, what did they first say? What are you reading today? And so they truly love to read, truly teachers. Bob was always reading, find out something from a book that he would read. I don't think he'd ever stop reading, learning, and teaching. He was loved by many. Those that happened to walk by one of our water holes when we were coffeeing with the geezers would say, hey, Coach, how's it going? And then others would come in, and one, for instance, came in several times with Robin Chokey Hawks. We'd go in over there and hug him and say, how you doing, Bob? This is my best teacher. This is my favorite teacher, she'd say all the time. Several times she said that. She wasn't the only one to show that love and admiration. One could see Bob's sense of pride, of love of this community. Last week in the afternoon, Rick Jenkins stopped by our coffee there at Martin's, and the word was brought up. He said, did you hear about Bob? He said, no. Well, they were informed that he had passed, and Rick was shocked. He was shocked, you could tell it. Rick said, funny thing, when we lived in Akron, I was in junior high, Bob was teaching there. And then we moved to Napanee, and gosh, I saw Bob walking down the halls in Napanee High School. Rick said, Dad even sold Bob his first home on Centennial Street in Napanee. Like I said, they've been here for 60 years, and this is his community, and he loves this place. When Bob's house and property was damaged by the hurricane, yeah, right, the tornado that came through, devastated some of his properties, his trees. I know he said he loved trees, and he told me how many came down, but I can't remember. But anyway, lots of the past students and athletes rallied around, pick him up to pieces. He was quick to note that the fellow teacher, Dick Geyer, helped him work hours on his electrical box. One could have had sensed the pride Bob had for the community he loved. Showing his love in the community, Bob then asked to be a Memorial Day speaker. He was all in. And some chamber functions too. Speaking of chamber, I'm not sure if Bob was honored as Teacher of the Year or Citizen of the Year. If not, they might want to consider posthumously, that's a hard word for me to say, award for him. Just a thought I had. Yesterday, I stopped by the Arts Center to see Jeff Stilson, and the subject of Coach Riley came up. Jeff played baseball for him. He was relating a story about they were going to Goshen to a ball game. Bob was the driver of the bus, and he said, "You know that curve right around that new school there at Goshen?" He said he went lickety-split around there, and I thought we were on two wheels going around there. He said we were up there and looking down at our players down here. And I think might have been a little exaggerating, but, you know, I just couldn't hardly believe it. Running late, I guess. Jeff thought they were taking the curve on two wheels, like I said. You know, and I would guess maybe 3 or 4 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, that story will probably come where, hey, we were on two wheels, we rolled over 3 times and got up on the 4 wheels and drove and made it to the thing. You know, as time goes, you embellish those stories. And it sounds kind of like a story that Chuck Mather, the What's the Point guy, might have come with. You have to know who Chuck is to get the point of this. Back to the coffee group. We moved several times now. We meet every Tuesday at 9 o'clock. If anybody wants to join us, feel free. You don't have to be a geezer. You can just come in and drink some coffee with us. We enjoy the time together. Lots of things going down. You know what most of the old folks, the geezers, to talk about was either sports or their latest shoulder injury or their knee that was replaced. You know, that's what old folks talked about. And the sports, you know, we'd wonder, what happened last night at that game? Well, between Bob and Brother Ralph and a gentleman just started coming to the geezers, Dan Richards, we'd get the quick summary of what was happening. Scores, injuries, who got fired, you name it, they had the answers. And now, every now and then, politics would pop up. Depending on the evening news and morning 24-hour news networks, some heated back and forth discussion would ensue. You always knew where Bob stood on the subject. He would change his subject and kind of stop the conversation with, "What's your point?" Usually getting in the last word. So now, cut it short here. Bob, I've got the last word. You are loved by many, and you're safe now. You're in the hands of the Lord. Rest in peace, Bob, my friend. Thank you.
Well, I do have prepared remarks, but following up on Pastor Chris's suggestion that you tell stories about Bob, sitting in the back of this sanctuary are a number of retired Northwood teachers. You need to corral them because they are full of stories that you will find fascinating and stories that I have wiped from my memory. But Joyce, Kim, Kevin, I've known Bob for 62 years. We both began teaching at Napanee High School. I was teaching 8th grade social studies. Bob was teaching U.S. history. And naturally, with those two, we got together often to discuss history and current events. He was a passionate history teacher who enjoyed teaching history and discussing current events and was able to pass that enthusiasm on to his students. In addition, both Bob and I were coaches at Napanee High School. Bob coached baseball and JV basketball, and I coached tennis. In the spring of the year, when the weather was bad, we had to hold practice in the gym. One gym, not a multitude of gyms, one gym we had to share. So we had that curtain that would come down halfway between the basketball goals, and we would share the gym. Well, during those times, I learned, it was obvious from watching Bob that he had a passion for coaching and would bring the best out of his players. Then when Northwood High School was formed, both Bob and I served on a number of committees to lay the foundation for Northwood High School, both in coaching, both in the athletic department, and both in the classroom department. Many meetings to discuss how to bring together two student bodies into the classroom and to athletics. As one of the coaches and one of the teachers, I really appreciated the effort that Bob made as we worked together to lay the foundation for Northwood High School and begin the traditions that would establish Northwood as an outstanding high school. And it's hard to believe that that's been 55 years. We were discussing the challenges of starting a new high school and bringing two high schools with great histories into one. I believe those, like Bob, who were instrumental in beginning the many successful programs at Northwood, can be proud of what has been accomplished. Of course, his baseball chili suppers were legend, and his skill to involve parents and players to support the baseball program. Then during the years I was vice principal and also girls athletic director, Bob was coaching the girls JV basketball team and was able to add his coaching skills to that sport. After leaving Northwood for the 1E Central office, I began to work more with Joyce and kept up to date with Joyce and the family through her work at the central office, and also through the same Sunday school class here at the church, and enjoyed hearing the stories of their families and their grandchildren growing up. Joyce, Pat, and I really appreciate your friendship over the years. Thank you.
We're going to take a pause in the stories for just a moment, because there's only so many stories you can take one after the other, because it'll get too much for the Kleenexes. So it's a good time for us to relax, and I want you to listen to this amazing song of faith, amazing grace that reminds us that in the end, it's God's amazing grace that made it so that Bob can be at home, and that we can join Coach Riley, Mr. Riley, when we leave this life as well. So before we talk about his family life, which is probably the most important factor of all of this, let's sit and listen to Amazing Grace together.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to start this off in your pretty typical way, so bear with me. For most of you, for the people here that do not know me, I am Robert Riley's many grandchildren. A lot of you here today knew my grandfather in your own special way. Some of you are one of his students he taught over the years. Some of you are one of his former players that he coached on the baseball field. And most of you are people that he loved and cherished throughout his entire life. For me, he was all of those things that he was for you. A teacher, a coach, and most importantly, someone who I loved with all my heart. Sorry. There are a lot of things that come to my mind when I think of my grandfather. For example, his love for wildlife and his garden, his work ethic, his deep high school and sports knowledge, and most importantly, his commitment to his family and his community. I have so many memories of growing up with my grandparents that it's hard to pinpoint which one stands out to me the most. When thinking of Grandpa, the first memories that come to my mind are the days that we spent fishing together. Sitting beside him and the 40 fishing rods for 2 people in the boat. Listening to his stories, waiting for him to ask me if my anti-reverse was on. To this day, I still have no clue what it does or how it benefits me. And most importantly, having a great time together. One of the things I'll always treasure about my grandpa is how he had his way of showing up for me when I least expected it. For me, growing up, I had many things wrong with me medically, a few of which required surgery to be fixed. With the surgeries I had, I was always a nervous kid, trying to stay calm and relaxed before heading into the operating room. Then out of nowhere, Grandma and Grandpa come walking in. They would always walk in about 10 minutes before I headed into the operating room, and it was always pretty perfect timing to make a kid calm down. Those surprises meant more to me than he will ever know, and it's something I will never forget. My grandpa was someone who always showed love in his own special way. He taught a lot of people about what it means to be a good person, a great baseball player. He taught me a lot of things. He taught me a lot about what it means to be a good person, a great baseball player, a better fisherman than my dad, brother, and cousin. Even though we're saying goodbye today, I know the love that he shared and the memories we made will stay with me forever. From fishing trips to surgery surprises, he left me with lessons and memories I will carry for the rest of my life. Love you, Grandpa. Thank you for being my grandfather, my teacher, my coach, and the best fishing partner there is. Thank you.
Thank you, Braden. Good afternoon, everyone. Looking at all of you gathered here today, I'm reminded of something Dad would probably say if he could see this crowd. Oh my gosh. And that's how fast he would say it. And he'd mean it in the best possible way. Amazed and humbled by the love and respect you're showing him today. My father, Robert, lived 88 incredible years. Not just long years, but years filled with purpose, love, and service to others. When I think about Dad, I think of 3 words always come to my mind: smart, honest, and caring. But more than that, he was a man who lived these qualities every single day, often in ways that went unnoticed until you really needed them. Let me tell you a story that perfectly captures who Dad was. During my college years, when I was playing ball for U of I, someone broke into my car and stole my baseball bag with my Wilson A2000 mitt inside. Now, if you know anything about baseball, you know that's not just any glove. It was expensive, about $190 at the time. I was devastated. Not just because of the theft, but because I know Mom and Dad were stretching every dollar to help my sister Kelly and I through school. I didn't even want to tell them what happened, but I didn't want to worry about replacing something so costly. But somehow, Dad found out, and 2 days later, a package arrived in the mail. Inside was a brand new Wilson A2000. No fanfare, no lecture about being more careful, no asking me to pay him back when I could, just a father quietly making sure his son had what he needed to keep playing the game he loved. He saw a problem, and he solved it, and even when it meant sacrifice. The quiet generosity was just one facet of a man whose achievements speak volumes about his character. Dad built a marriage that lasted 68 years with my mom, Joyce. 68 years. In today's world, that's not just an achievement. It's a master class in commitment, patience, and love. He paid his own way through college at a time when it meant real sacrifice and determination. In his coaching career, he retired with the 5th most wins in Indiana State baseball history. But I know Dad would want me to tell you about that he measures success not in wins and losses, but in the young people he helped shape along the way. Growing up in Porter County, Dad had the grand champion steer at the county fair in 1951. You can find the original newspaper headlines outside, as well as the medal steer he got the trophy over back there by the article. This was just another example of how he approached everything in life. Whenever he committed to it, he did it with excellence and care. Later in life, when we had us kids and we moved out in the country, Dad allowed us to raise steers for 4-H, as well as showed us all the ropes. Dad is what you call a Renaissance man. He loved to read, and his memory is simply remarkable. He could tell you the entire plot of a book he'd read 25 years earlier, and also the author's name and the year it was published, and probably quote you a passage or two. He was a certified master gardener who took immense pride in his yard and loved nature. He'd spend hours outside each day tending to his koi pond, and those fish knew him as well as any friend. He loved fishing, and more importantly, he loved teaching the grandkids how to fish. Not just the mechanics or casting a line, but the patience, the observation, the quiet appreciations for being in nature. My family would go to Campbell Lake in Michigan each summer with grandparents and the cousins, and all the grandkids would argue about who got the privilege of going out with Grandpa. In later years, we took annual trips to Minnesota. It started out just the two of us, and later the grandsons and Kim joined us. Sometimes we didn't catch fish, but we always laughed and had a lot of good memories. Dad was also a Christian who lived his beliefs through his actions. He didn't preach about from the soapboxes, but he taught us through example, showing kindness to everyone, treating people with respect, regardless of their station in life, and always being honest even when it wasn't easy. With a number of people here today, I'd say Dad probably impacted your life or your child's life in some way, whether it was in the classroom, through driver's education, where he kept countless teenagers safe on the roads, or the baseball diamond. Dad had a gift for meeting people where they were and helping them become better versions of themselves. He was a history teacher. He was my history teacher, my driver's ed teacher, my coach, and best of all, my dad. I might not have been his best player, but I think I was his favorite. Well, I miss most talking on the phone to Dad 2 or 3 times a week. Dad and I would talk not just about family and news or the Cubs' latest heartbreak, but about life. Even at 88, he was still answering my questions about why things would happen in the world, still offering his wisdom, still being the person I turned to when I needed guidance. That's what Dad did. He would stay present and a source of wisdom, a man who showed up for 68 years. He showed up for Mom for decades. He showed up for all his students and players. For my life, he showed up. For my whole life, he showed up for me and my sisters in the way he lived, in the values he demonstrated, in the love he shared. He'll continue to show up for all of us. Dad used to say, "Oh my gosh," when things amazed him. Well, Dad, looking at all these lives you touched, all this love you've inspired, all the good done you've done for 88 years. Oh my gosh, indeed. Thank you for showing us how to live with intelligence, honesty, and caring. Thank you for being exactly the father, husband, teacher, and friend this world needed. Rest in peace, Dad. The game is over. but your legacy lives on in every life you touched. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today to remember and celebrate a truly exceptional man. To many of you, he was a teacher, a coach, a friend, a mentor. But to me, he was Grandpa, and he was a damn good one at that. It's hard to encapsulate a lifetime into a few minutes, but when I think about my grandfather, certain things immediately come to mind. His comforting presence, his deeply rooted sense of integrity, and the unwavering love he had for his entire family, especially his grandchildren. He was never someone who desired the spotlight or asked for praise. He lived his life by quietly leading through example, through his work ethic, through the way he cared for his family, and through the small, everyday acts of kindness that he probably never thought twice about. But those moments mattered, they added up, and they impacted all of us. Some of my favorite memories with him are the simple ones. It was my cousins and I waking up to a box of donuts in the morning for breakfast. It was the smell of his tool shed and the thrill we got when he let us ride on his John Deere lawnmower. It was picking fresh strawberries from his garden or planting flowers in the backyard. And it was our long phone calls that we shared where we discuss a range of topics, anywhere from sports to historical events to recent visitors to his bird feeder and the books we were reading at the time. He instilled in me a love of fishing and nature, and which I will always cherish. Similar to Kevin and Brady, some of my favorite memories with him are when we got to go fishing together. And one thing I will always remember is the way he would reel in a fish. I can still picture him, while the rest of us trying to get it in as quickly as possible. Not Grandpa. I can still picture him. It's calm as ever, taking his time. He never rushed it. He always enjoyed the fight. It was the patience, it was the process. And looking back, I realize that's how he lived his life too. Steady, thoughtful, never in a hurry to force anything. And without ever saying it directly, he taught me that some things are worth taking slowly. He loved his family deeply. And sure, if you caught him on one of his grumpier days, which we all did occasionally, you might not have known it right away, but his love was constant, even when it wasn't obvious. It was reliable, and you could count on it, the same way you could always count on him. So losing him, it leaves a space in our lives that won't ever be filled in the same way. But the gifts he left us, his values, his stories, his love, those remain. And those are the parts of him that will stay with us. So today, even as we grieve and we also give thanks, thanks for his life, thanks for his example, and thanks for the time we were blessed to have with him. Grandpa, we love you, we'll miss you dearly, and we'll do our best to honor you by living the same moral character, strength, and generosity you showed all of us.
Thank you to all of you who have come here today to honor my dad, Bob Riley. First, I'll share a few stories about Dad and then touch on the tenets of his life of community, education, athletics, family, and faith. Dad was a great public speaker, often without notes. It seemed effortless, but in all cases it was something or someone he was passionate about, close friends, our nation, historical events, or instances of injustice. He was raised on a farm, but for some reason he could not fix anything. His brain did not work that way. We were so fortunate when we were younger to live next to Bob Unger, who could fix anything and had all the correct tools. Dad never wore blue jeans. He once told me that growing up, he was too poor to wear anything else, so he vowed never to wear them again once he could afford something else. He was a voracious reader. He rotated between histories, current events, and murder mysteries by authors such as Martin Cruz Smith and Daniel De Silva. He never learned to type and wrote everything longhand on legal pads for my mom to type. Eulogies, speeches, either for himself or others, letters of recommendation, letters to the editor, and final exams. He was loyal to his friends. If you needed something, he was there. He was forever saving parts of newspapers for friends, the Sunday crossword puzzle or sports sections, which were piled up on the kitchen table until he delivered them. In recent years, he visited the funeral home weekly, paying tributes to friends, relatives of friends, and the parents of former baseball players. He was also an extremely hard worker. During the summer, when we were kids, he'd teach driver's ed in the morning, come home for lunch, squeezing in an episode of All My Children, then head off to paint houses, first with Don McKee, later Rick Bowen, and then Denny Myers. Then after that, he'd either go to practice or games for his summer baseball teams. He wasn't always patient or tactful. I came to call him Grumpy Cat at times and was the designated family member to confront him about things. He was frustrated with the deterioration of his body and his hearing. A few weeks ago, I called him and said, "Dad, you sound great. What's going on?" He said, "Well, I'm happy because someone came and finally got my bushes trimmed and my flower beds cleaned out." He had done the unthinkable the previous week before, called someone in to help him. Now the tenets that drove my dad his entire life. In 1963, the family moved to Napanee, and he started teaching at the high school. My brother was born in September of that year, leaving 3 kids under 4 in a house that was barely maybe 900 square feet. A few years went by, and out of the blue, he gets a phone call from Gil Jenkins. He knew that my dad had taught at Akron, which is where he was originally from, and was moving back there. And he had a house on West Centennial Street that he wondered if we would like to move into. He would even sweeten the deal by letting part of the rent go towards a down payment. To my dad, this was just the beginning of kindness that he encountered in Napanee. And because of that kindness, we grew up in a neighborhood that was overflowing with kids, many of whom are here today. I got to make sure I get everybody's name because I don't want to make anybody mad. Hockert, Slagle, Beer, Hand, Adams, Heckerman, Chrisman, Stump, Yoder, Bigler, Charles, Honeycutt, and Huntsberger. The second tenet of his life is education. Our family vacations were fun and always had a bit of history thrown in. If there was a Civil War battlefield close by, we were there. When I told him I was switching majors my freshman year of college to become a teacher, he said, "I always knew you would." My greatest regret, however, was listening to him when he told me not to become a history teacher because I would never make any money. And I was like, oh. So history is one of my passions, And we would spend so much time together talking about historical events, books, documentaries, and movies. I found a letter he wrote in response to an editorial written about the effects of television on reading. The author generally wrote about local sports, but had ventured into another lane. My dad agreed with the author, but one paragraph made me laugh. He said, "If you recognize my name, humility is not my strong point. Don't assume because I'm an old coach that I got into teaching only as an avenue to coach. I've always been as intense about the classroom as I have been about basketball or baseball." Third, athletics. He loved Northwood athletics and was so proud of the school. I think he took special pride in being there at the beginning. He loved that former athletes of his were great coaches like Steve Neff and Jim Andrews. He basically built the original baseball field, and I do remember him and Eldon Yoder going round and round about mowing schedules and grass height. Former baseball players would regularly knock on his door to say hi. Gary Ingalls, Steve Yoder, and Ernie Mast come to mind. He even worked with a guy at Tri-County Ambulance who was on one of his first teams at Star City, Indiana, and Dad was maybe 3 or 4 years older than the seniors on that team. That gentleman still called him Coach, even though they were both in their 60s. After the tornado went through in 2007, the first call I got was from a ball player's wife, asking if I had heard from my parents. I said no, but that I would find out how they were. After talking to them, I told them I'd be up the next day. When I got there on Thursday morning and parked in the field behind their property, I couldn't see the house because of all the trees that were down. Ball players and their families were already there, working with chainsaws. Eventually, they brought in front loaders and dump trucks. My parents lost 17 trees that night, some at least 100 years old. On Friday night, after working for 2 days straight, the players sat around on the patio, telling stories that they've told dozens of times before, falling over with laughter. My dad just sat there and smiled. It was a perfect ending to a tragic couple of days. As I was going through his documents, I found a letter from a former player from the late 60s who congratulated him on his 1998 induction into the Elkhart County Sports Hall of Fame. He said, quote, "It was an honor for me to play for you 30 years ago. The memories and lessons of those years have remained with me. We won baseball games, we had fun, we played as a team, we learned about life." He told me a story about 3 weeks ago that he said he had never told anyone before. A few years after Jim Andrews took over the football field, he asked Dad to coach middle school football. Now, my dad graduated from a school, well, he had 14 in his class, so he didn't play football. Jim said he thought he could coach middle school couple 3 years, and then move up to JV. And my dad said, "No, I can't do that." Jim came back again, and after my dad declined the second time, Jim said, I wouldn't be hiring you for your football skills. I'm hiring you for your life skills." Ironically, that same argument was said to me to start coaching lacrosse. Fourth, family. We were a typical family of the 70s, out until dark. No one really knew where we were. Our family signal to come home was 3 blasts on the athletic whistle. Dad didn't yell too much when we were kids. We never wanted to disappoint him. He was competitive, but didn't emphasize it overtly. I remember going out to the yard every dinner after dinner and having batting practice. We had to bat both right-handed and left-handed and never thought anything about it. We always had a first tomato of the season contest with Bob Unger. It didn't occur to me until later that we were never going to win that contest because our garden never went in until after Memorial Day, when baseball lightened up. We unexpectedly lost our sister Kelly in January. She and my father shared a special bond. They both gave 110% in whatever they were doing, and they were both always doing something. They both loved talking to people and being social. Their leadership skills were unparalleled. Her death hit him very hard. He loved attending and supporting his grandchildren's athletic events: football, basketball, baseball, cross country, volleyball, track, cheer, dance, and lacrosse. Most of us in the family loved to fish. Every summer, Dad would take one of us to his favorite Milford Lake, always patiently explaining why we weren't going to catch the jumping carp. We spent years up in Michigan, often with the Campbell family, fishing and swimming. Each summer, it seemed like the kids were learning how to operate a new watercraft: paddle boats, rafts, rowboats, canoes, and kayaks. One time, my dad told me, "I bought you a surprise, a sailboat for $50. I said, "Dad, I don't know how to sail." He said, you'll learn. So I bought a book, taught myself how to sail, and spent many enjoyable hours on it with the family. Later in life, I was the den mother on fishing trips to Wisconsin and Minnesota with Dad, Kevin, and available grandsons, searching for the elusive muskie. My mom and Dad were married 68 years. He set a fantastic example of how to love and cherish a spouse. He always took care of my mom, and Kevin and I will do the same. And finally, faith. My dad was pretty quiet about his faith. He lived the golden rule. He was raised in the Baptist church, but always said he became a Methodist so he could dance. A couple of Thanksgivings ago, we were driving back from Kelly's house in Connorsville, and I was playing Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack. When the next song came on, he leaned over to me and he said, "Honey, you know, I'd really like it if you play this at my funeral." And I said, "Okay, Daddy, here you go. Love you."
Thank you to all who shared. It takes such courage to share those words, and I encourage you all to share in the stories that you have for each other as we continue to get through this thing called grief together, as we say goodbye. But with that, let's go to God to say one last blessing as we prepare to leave this place. Let us pray. God of us all, your love never ends. When all else fails, you still are God. We pray to you for one another in our need, and for all, anywhere, who mourn with us this day. To those who doubt, give light. To those who are weak, strength. To all who have sinned, mercy. And to all who sorrow, your peace. Keep true in us the love with which we hold one another. In all our ways we trust you. O God, all that you have given us is yours. As first you gave Robert, Bob, Mr. Riley to us, now we give him back to you. Receive him into the arms of your mercy and raise him up with all your people. Receive us also and raise us into new life. Help us so to love and serve you in this world that we may enter into your joy in the world to come. Amen. There's only one housekeeping item before we move on to the extra piece, and this is the place for the people upstairs is where we have to cut the online feed because we're going to play a song that is not copyright friendly, and so goodbye, we love you all. But before we do that, I want to invite those that are gathered here to join us afterwards in the gathering area on the far side. There's a meal prepared if you'd like to stay and eat. Encourage you to stay and talk with the family. And then as the song begins to play, Larry was going to come forward, dismiss the family, and then dismiss you all to join them as well. So that's kind of the piece that goes out with that. With the dinner piece, if you are going, please just start making your way all the way over there, because every funeral you kind of got like clump here, and then I have to run you like cats into the other room. So please don't make me do that, and so find your way that way, please. But more than that, that song that Kip mentioned is a powerful reminder that when we die, We're going to go back to the Spirit in the sky. So let's listen to this lovely song as we dismiss. So Bob is at home with the Spirit in the sky.